A child and her single mother waited outside the hospital. The CEO sat down. Instead of walking away, the cold outside the hospital was the kind that crept silently into bones, the kind that made even hope feel fragile. Snow lay in uneven patches along the sidewalk, trampled by hurried feet that had places to go and lives to return to. Most people walked fast here, eyes forward, hearts guarded. But on one worn concrete bench near the emergency entrance, time seemed to have stopped. A young single mother and her small daughter sat still, as if moving might shatter the last piece of strength they had left. Before the story unfolds further, take a moment. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that one small decision can change an entire life, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today. Comment your thoughts, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. Emily Carter had been sitting on that bench for hours. She did not check her phone anymore because there was nothing new to see. No missed calls, no messages offering help. The hospital doors slid open and closed endlessly, swallowing people whole and releasing them changed. But never once did they open for her. She pulled her thin coat tighter around herself and her daughter, Lily, even though she knew it wouldn't help much. The coat was old, the zipper broken, and the cold always found its way in. Lily's cheeks were pink from the freezing air, but her eyes were calm in a way only children's eyes could be, trusting that her mother would somehow make everything okay. Emily was 26, but exhaustion had carved years into her face. Life had not collapsed for her all at once. It had fallen apart slowly, piece by piece, until one day she looked around and realized there was nothing left to hold on to. Lily's father had disappeared before her second birthday, leaving behind apologies that meant nothing and promises that never returned. Emily had worked 2 jobs until her body gave out, until her hands shook from lack of sleep, and her heart raced from constant fear. Then Lily got sick. Not the kind of sick that passes with rest and soup, but the kind that sends doctors into hushed conversations and fills hospital rooms with quiet dread. Inside that hospital, Lily's test results were being delayed again. Insurance had run out weeks ago. Emily had begged, cried, filled out forms she barely understood. She had slept in chairs, skipped meals, and sold the last pieces of jewelry her mother had given her before she died. And now, on this freezing afternoon, they were waiting outside because Emily could not afford another night inside without answers. Lily swung her small feet above the ground, humming softly, unaware of the weight pressing down on her mother's chest. Emily watched people pass them by. Well-dressed professionals, tired nurses, worried families. Some glanced at them and quickly looked away. Others didn't see them at all. Emily did not blame them. Everyone had their own pain. Still, each passing step felt like another door closing. That was when Jonathan Reed walked out of the hospital. Jonathan was the CEO of one of the largest healthcare technology companies in the United States. His life was built on schedules, efficiency, and decisions measured in millions of dollars. He was known for walking fast, for never lingering, for always being late to the next important meeting. That afternoon, he had just finished a private board discussion with hospital executives about expanding services, about innovation, about numbers on screens that represented lives he would never meet. As he stepped into the cold, his phone buzzed again, demanding his attention. He was already calculating his next move, already halfway gone, when something slowed him down. Not a sound, not a voice calling out to him, but a feeling. A quiet pull he hadn't felt in years. He noticed the little girl first. Lily's red coat stood out against the gray winter, her small hands tucked into sleeves that were too long. She was looking up at her mother with complete trust, the kind that assumes the world is safe because someone you love is there. Jonathan's steps faltered. He glanced at Emily and saw the strain in her posture, the way she leaned slightly forward as if bracing against an invisible storm. He could have kept walking. He had done it 1,000 times before. But instead, something unexpected happened. Jonathan Reed turned back and sat down on the cold bench beside them. The concrete was unforgiving, seeping cold through his tailored suit, but he did not move. Emily noticed him then, startled, unsure. She straightened instinctively, embarrassed by her worn clothes, by her presence in a world she felt she no longer belonged to. Lily looked at Jonathan with curiosity, her eyes wide and innocent. Jonathan did not speak at first. He simply sat there, sharing the silence, sharing the cold. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to be still. Memories surfaced uninvited. A different hospital, a different bench, a younger version of himself sitting beside his own mother when he was 7, waiting for news that would never come. His mother had been sick too. Back then, they had been alone as well. Emily felt tears burn behind her eyes. Not because of what Jonathan did, but because of what he didn't do. He didn't hurry away. He didn't look at her like a problem to avoid. He stayed. And that small act cracked something open inside her. Minutes passed. The cold deepened. Jonathan took off his expensive coat without thinking and wrapped it gently around Lily. Emily tried to protest, but her voice failed her. Lily smiled, warmth returning to her small body. That smile hit Jonathan harder than any business loss ever had. He learned their story not through dramatic words, but through fragments, through the way Emily's shoulders shook, through the exhaustion in her eyes. He understood enough. Too much. This was not about charity or image. This was about being human in a moment where humanity was desperately needed. Jonathan stood and walked back into the hospital, leaving Emily confused and afraid that she had imagined the kindness. She clutched Lily closer, bracing herself for disappointment. But he returned, this time with purpose. Doors opened that had been closed for weeks. Calls were made that cut through red tape like it was nothing. Suddenly, doctors spoke clearly. Tests were approved. Treatment plans were outlined. Not because Jonathan was powerful, but because he chose to care. Emily watched it all unfold in disbelief. For weeks she had felt invisible, like her pain did not matter. Now someone had seen her. Not as a burden, not as a problem, but as a mother fighting for her child. The days that followed were heavy, but hopeful. Lily received the care she needed. Emily slept in a real bed for the first time in months, even if it was a hospital chair. Jonathan did not disappear after that day. He checked in quietly, without cameras or announcements. He listened. He remembered Lily's name. As Lily slowly grew stronger, Jonathan found himself changing too. Board meetings felt hollow. Numbers seemed smaller. He started asking questions he had never asked before. About access, about fairness, about the people sitting on benches outside hospitals waiting in the cold. Emily eventually learned who Jonathan really was, and it terrified her. But he never treated her differently. He never made her feel small. Instead, he reminded her of something she had forgotten, her strength. He helped her connect with support programs, with job training, with childcare resources. Not as a savior, but as someone walking beside her. Months later, on a warmer day, Emily and Lily walked out of the hospital together. Lily held a small stuffed bear, her steps lighter, her laughter real. Emily stopped by the same bench where everything had changed. She sat down, breathing deeply, feeling the sun on her face instead of the cold. Jonathan watched from a distance, knowing that some moments are not meant to be interrupted. He had not fixed the world. He had not erased all suffering. But he had sat down instead of walking away, and that had been enough to change everything. Before this story ends, if it touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in compassion, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. And one more special request before we close. Please comment below with a simple word, kindness. Let it be a reminder that sometimes the smallest act can carry the greatest power. Emily and Lily disappeared into their new life, carrying scars but also hope. Jonathan returned to his world forever changed, knowing that success means nothing if you never stop to sit beside someone in need. And somewhere outside a hospital on a quiet bench, The echo of that decision still lives, reminding us all that humanity begins the moment we choose not to walk away. Spring arrived slowly, almost cautiously, as if the world itself needed reassurance before believing warmth could return. For Emily Carter, each morning felt unreal in the best possible way. She woke up not to panic or the echo of hospital hallways, but to Lily's soft breathing beside her and sunlight slipping through a modest apartment window. The place was small, almost bare, yet it held something she had not felt in years: stability, the kind that allows a mother to breathe without fear clawing at her chest. Lily's recovery was not instant or miraculous. There were difficult days, medications that left her tired, follow-up appointments that reminded Emily how close they had come to losing everything. But Lily laughed again. She ran without coughing. She slept through the night. And each of those moments felt like a victory carved from pain. Emily kept thinking back to that cold bench outside the hospital, to the man who sat down when the world had taught her to expect people to walk away. Jonathan Reed returned to his routine, but nothing felt routine anymore. Boardrooms seemed quieter, even when filled with voices. Graphs and projections blurred together as his mind drifted to faces he could not forget. He had spent years convincing himself that change happened only through systems and strategies, yet one quiet afternoon had undone that belief. He began asking different questions in meetings, questions that made people uncomfortable. Who was being left out? Who was waiting outside? Who never made it through the doors? His company launched initiatives that didn't make headlines at first. Partnerships with hospitals to cover emergency care gaps. Pilot programs for single parents navigating medical crises. Jonathan avoided publicity, not out of humility, but because he knew this work was not about him. It was about making sure fewer mothers sat freezing on benches, wondering how much more they could endure. Emily enrolled in a healthcare administration training program recommended by a social worker Jonathan had connected her with. The irony was not lost on her. After nearly losing her child to a broken system, she was learning how to help others navigate it. The classes were hard. Doubt crept in often, whispering that she didn't belong, that she was pretending to be stronger than she was. But every time Lily hugged her and said she was proud, Emily found the courage to continue. Jonathan checked in occasionally, never intruding, never positioning himself as a hero. A short message asking how Lily was doing. A quiet note of encouragement when Emily passed an exam. He remained a presence without becoming a shadow, and in that balance, something rare formed: respect. Months passed. Summer brought warmth, and with it, a sense of renewal. Lily started preschool, her small backpack bouncing as she walked, her laughter echoing across the playground. Emily watched from a distance, tears in her eyes, remembering the fear that once defined her days. She thought of how close she had been to giving up, not because she lacked love or effort, but because the world had almost convinced her she was alone. Jonathan attended a hospital opening that summer, standing at a podium surrounded by applause. Cameras flashed, speeches were made, and success was celebrated. Yet his proudest moment came later, unnoticed, when he stepped outside and saw a new bench placed near the entrance. A plaque on it read simply, "For those who wait, you are not invisible." Jonathan smiled, knowing exactly why it was there. Emily and Jonathan crossed paths again by chance at a community health event. There was no dramatic reunion, no emotional speeches, just a quiet understanding that their lives had intersected for a reason. Emily thanked him, not for the resources or the help, but for seeing her. Jonathan thanked her in return, though he wasn't sure she understood why. She had reminded him of who he once was, before success had hardened his edges. As the year drew to a close, Emily stood in front of a mirror, adjusting her blazer, preparing for her first day as an administrative assistant at the same hospital where her story had nearly ended. Lily stood nearby, holding the stuffed bear she had received months ago, now worn and loved. Emily knelt down, steadying herself, realizing that strength is not the absence of fear, but the decision to keep moving despite it. Jonathan watched from afar as Emily stepped into her new role, not because he was monitoring her progress, but because her journey symbolized the change he believed was possible. He knew there were countless others like her, still waiting, still cold, still unseen, and he knew he could never walk past them again. The bench outside the hospital remained, weathered by seasons and footsteps. People sat on it every day. Parents, patients, strangers. Some waited with hope, others with fear, and sometimes someone would sit beside them, not to fix everything, not to save the day, but simply to stay. Because sometimes the moment that changes a life forever isn't loud or heroic. Sometimes it's just a person choosing to sit down instead of walking away.